Shalom, Kal Halalim, La Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of GMS who rule well, who I learned this truth from. And salutations and blessings to you elect, starting with the 144,000. All right, and the rest of the elect. So in this lesson, I'm going to read Daniel chapter 7, all right, verse 7. And this is something we touched upon at camp yesterday. All right, today's Sunday, so Saturday, we were at camp and we were kind of going into the diversity of the Roman Empire and pretty much what made it so much greater than its predecessors, right? So this is Daniel chapter 7 and 7. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Now there's a lot of points here, right? A lot of key points. This, first of all, this is a beast, right? So we understand that these four beasts in the book of Daniel and other scriptures, each beast represents a kingdom, because these nations are lawless, right? So they come in the spirit of a beast, right? They were mainly pagans, and they did things in the customs of a beast, pretty much, because they didn't have the laws, statutes, and commandments of the Most High. And this beast, this fourth beast, great, dreadful, and terrible, and strong, is representing the ancient pagan Roman Empire, right? Now it mentioned the iron, which is a very, very key takeaway or identifier, right, of who this is speaking about, because the Romans utilize the material or element iron, and especially in their army, which gave them a big advantage, right? So let's get into some history, right? This is from Ducksters.com, ancient Roman army, right? So here is a point on the armor. It says the government knew the importance of the Roman army and provided them with good armor and weapons. Roman soldiers had armor made of strips of strong iron. The iron made the armor strong, and the strips made it flexible. They also had iron helmets which protected their heads and neck, but still let them have good vision for fighting. All of this iron armor was heavy, so they needed to be strong and in good shape. I believe when I was looking into it, it was about 90 pounds of armor, 90 pounds of weight that they had to walk around in. So you can imagine that, for brothers that work out, if you ever, you had your, that weighted vest, you got your 10, 20, 40, 50 pounds, 60 pounds. That's soft. That's nothing, man. 60 pounds walking around. These guys are walking around with 90 pounds, and they march for a long time. It says they also carried tall shields in some cases. The weapons, the Roman soldiers used a variety of weapons, including a pugio, a dagger, right, gladius, sword, a hasta, spear, a javelin, and bows and arrows. The soldiers were trained to fight with their weapons and practice on a regular basis. They would sometimes spar with each other using wooden swords. And again, another key takeaway when it mentions here, it says dreadful, terrible, and strong exceeding. The Romans were more warlike in general than the Greeks. Another point was Ares, which later became known as Mars, the god Mars in the Roman world. Ares, which was the god of war for the Greeks, it was hardly worshipped pretty much outside of Sparta, which the Spartans were majority Jake, if not all Jake, right? And the Greeks never really, they seldom worshipped it. It wasn't as big as the Romans made Mars, the worship of the god Mars, which is the god of war. So that's another key point to take away. Let me go here now. So this is from, all right, this is the title here. Why was the Roman legion so successful? And as you can see, it says no bread in circuses today. You can see the picture here. These guys, this is a depiction of that utilization of armor, and I'm going to show you more pictures just to compare between, the other kingdoms. It says one of the cornerstones of Roman expansion, the Roman legion, a military unit of well-armed heavy infantry, proved to be one of the most potent military forces in the known world. So all these scriptures, man, these scriptures are live, and these scriptures are have been prophesying about all these things, man. You had this bloke, this degenerate Edomite from England. He came up to camp, and at first we were entertaining him, and we were, I wasn't really mad at him because first of all, we didn't have people like that come up for years and contest and scoff. But he was talking a lot of shit about the scriptures, man, pretty much blaspheming, being an Edomite. And we were telling him, look, in the scriptures you have all these kingdoms and you have history in the scriptures, because he's asking who wrote that. It was some man, and he said out of his mouth that, oh, who wrote that? It was a bloke, pretty much nobody, right? But little does he know that these scriptures, man, they line up with history. They are prophetic. There's a lot of substance in it. The Bible is a book of history, prophecy. you know it's a very deep book. So all this we're reading, right, is just an extrapolation of what we were just reading in the scriptures, man, right? So it says, proving more flexible than the phalanx and better able to handle tough, rugged terrain of its enemies, the legion was better adapted than any prior infantry unit fielded by the Romans to handle the myriad of challenges demanded by their extensive military campaigns. Nonetheless, the legion also kept the strengths of their Greek forebears, including the intense and systematic drilling and discipline exhibited in Greek and Macedonian armies fielded in bygone eras. But the legion's success also lay in its physical accoutrement. Accoutrement. I don't know what that word. Let me actually look up that word. Let's look up words. Let me see. Accoutrement. Accoutrement. All right. Additional items of dress or equipment, or other items carried or worn by a person or used for a particular activity, right? i.e., the iron strips we were reading about earlier. The Roman legion was often better armed, especially in the later stages of the Republic, than its enemies, giving them an edge on the battlefield. Now, this part when it mentions at the last part, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, right? That really goes into its system, the Republic, right? It was different from the Greeks, and of course the prior, the Babylonians and the Persian, the Medes. It goes into the major part of that system, right? And also other things about what we're reading about with how they utilized the army, how they dressed them, how they trained, right? The Romans had a different philosophy, right? The Romans had smaller units that they would train, and they can do other things in the battlefield. They weren't just one army, so to speak. They can do different things, and they were more independent, if you will. So it says, often cases the heavy armaments of the Roman legion, namely their heavy shields, helmets, and body armor, gave them a serious advantage over their enemies, who often only had shields in long-term engagements. Yet another key to the success of the legion lay in the psychology of the Roman state itself. The Romans were more willing in the long run than their enemies to absorb long-term losses, as is illustrated in their handling of devastating military losses at the hands of such preeminent generals as Hannibal and Pyrrhus. Yet the Romans' intense grit and desire to succeed in the long run was also matched by an equally intense curiosity about the military practices of their neighbors. As Montesquieu noted, The Romans were always willing to give up their own practices as soon as they found better ones. The latter practice of reverse engineering weapons and tactics of their enemies can be testified in such key weapons as the gladius, borrowed from the Iberian tribes of modern southeastern Spain, the kinkurim, a type of warship developed by their early rivals, the Carthaginians, as well as the gear and tactics of their heavy cavalry and mounted archers, right? Because Esau's a man of war, so he would learn these things from the majority of these people I read about, Iberians and Carthaginians. Those are Israelites, and Esau still studies us, the Israelites, in history in his military academies. It says these latter strengths, in particular, made up for the inconsistent quality of military leadership often exhibited in the earlier Roman campaigns. Only the intense military and civic culture showcased in the Roman legion gave the Roman military consistent motivation and cohesion to properly pull through difficult, poorly strategized campaigns. Now, let's go to some images, right? The difference between the Romans and the Greeks. You can see the heavy um, armor. Right on top, you have the Greeks. At the bottom, these are the Romans. Right, you see the strips of iron, the heavy iron, the heavy shields. The legionnaires had those heavy shields. Right, so they had a more utilization for the iron, and it also represented them, just as the scripture says. Right, they devoured and break in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet. Right, you can just see that. See, on the left is the predecessor, the Greeks, and to the right, this man's ironed up. Right, iron helmet, damn iron shin pad, leg pad, you know. So this is what the Bible is speaking about, man. Again, this is a book of history, prophecy. All right, and let's go here, read some of these points. It says, in what way did the Greek and Roman civilizations differ? There are several major differences. First of all, the Romans were considerably more warlike than the Greeks. Right, Ares, the primary Greek god of war, was rarely worshipped outside of Sparta. In contrast, his Roman counterpart Mars had a much more central role. And down here it says, how were the Greek and Roman civilizations different? Greek governments varied from kings and oligarchs to the totalitarian racist warrior culture of Sparta and the direct democracy of Athens, whereas Roman kings gave way to a representative elected republic until it was displaced by the power of the emperors. All right, so that's just a little understanding of how it was diverse from all the other beasts, right? The republic, the system of the Caesars. Okay, so anyway, with that, I hope you're edified. All right, I want to say Kal Halalim La Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahweh Shai Ba'Hashem Racha HaKodash. Shalom to the elect. Shalom.